when they've been chronic. Oh, thank you. So being able, like, it gives me a more clear picture of the lay of the land. The other idea I think about is I'm walking out, through the desert in the springtime. I'm here in southern Utah. It's beautiful. Take a hike up in the Red Rocks or something, and there's these little wildflowers all around. And when we first came, they're just like ground cover or wildflowers or something. But as I get to learn them and the names of them, and which flowers are related and how they're related to each other, like when I see them, I can go, oh, look, there's that verbena, or there's that lantana, and it makes it so much more rich and specific, which I think helps then if we're thinking about us with our clients who don't know in a way that really helps them stabilize, or then go deeper into their own inner world, what's happening. And so when we don't know and we can't see, and we're working to describe, that already increases our anxiety, right? If I'm the client. And so for me, the more I've had an understanding of the biology and the physiology of what's happening, the more I'm able to slow my clients down in a very congruent way, build safety in the session, help them increase or decrease the reactivity in their nervous system so they can expand, their window of tolerance. We can use that like window of opportunity when we see their distress to increase that opportunity, that window of opportunity, as they get more comfortable in their own skin, and their nervous system actually has some healing brought to it through connection and through building safety. So I interviewed Stephen Porges about, I don't know, it's maybe been 10 years ago, 10 years ago. I was doing an interview series, webinars, and I interviewed him. It was before he had kind of linked up with Deb Dana and they tried to bring, or have been successfully bringing polyvagal into therapy. But so I've been, reading his science, following him, keeping track of him for a number of years. And it's taken me actually quite a while to kind of figure out how to make it applicable in a really tangible and useful way. I've had to play around with it quite a bit for a while. I'm not sure. Did that answer the question? Maybe it was a little long.
No, that does. And I was going to ask kind of the benefits that you have seen by working with this. And I can already see that, like that creating safety, expanding that window of tolerance. So that kind of leads to this next one for me. Can you speak to any of the potential challenges or limitations in using EFT and polyvagal theory together in therapy? Are there any?
Well, the challenges for us as the therapist is our own nervous system, right? And like for me, I consider myself sort of a tech and science geek on the low, on the low level relative to a lot of other therapists. I'm like way high, and my personality type is unusual for a therapist. So like one thing that can happen to me in my nervous system is I get all this information. And then if I start to get dysregulated or activated myself, I can go to my head. Many of us can go to our head. I can flee up to my cognition, get out of touch with myself, which doesn't increase the safety in session or in my own nervous system. It may soothe me for, after a while of being like up in my head, being educational or something. And, maybe with enough minutes of doing that, it could kind of soothe clients in some way too, because it's an avoidance strategy, but doesn't actually bring safety and connection in, right? So in a direct way. So it could be kind of a indirect way, which elongates the course of treatment and doesn't really help clients be in a co-regulated state directly. So there's less coherence and less resonance then. Like then they're working to like, where are you? You know, let me follow you along, and I'm going to suppress my own feelings more. And, you know, I think it just complicates therapy. So one of the challenges is that we can know a lot, and then we can lean on the knowing instead of the relating.
Oh my goodness. Everybody raise your hand if you are like, oh, I've done that. How many? Oh my goodness. Why do we
Hey, Joe.
We're dysregulated. We're out
Lisa,
of
can I share
tolerance.
something? Can I just share something real quick,
Hi,
Rebecca?
Christine.
Hi, Rebecca. I love that because it goes back to the saying that I don't know, or I don't care how much you know until I know how much you care.
Right.
So thank you. I love that.
I'm writing the way you said that down. You said we can lean on the knowing rather than the relating. Is that what you said, Becca?
I think so. We'll have to replay the tape for sure.
It was a brilliant statement, and it needs to be quoted with your name under it. It was so good.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you.
Yeah, I
And
think
I would just add that I remember you teaching a long time ago, Becca, about the word presence, like emotional presence. And to me, that's what just exploded in my head just now, was when I'm leaning on, you know, a theory or a step, or even, yeah, some piece of information, how I can lose presence with my client. And I'm just wondering if that there's probably some kind of a polyvagal connection to when I'm going in and out of presence.
Yeah, certainly. Well, one of the things that I'll be talking more about in the masterclass is what we're coming to understand about mixed states. And because polyvagal theory, it gets into when we're under danger, but it adds more than that, because one of the things that Stephen Porges teaches about is what he calls neuroception, that we're always sensing, you know, because of the way this vagus nerve works and goes through all of our major organs, are like from behind our ear, in our head, down our neck, down our vocal cords, around our heart. And it has these different branches of the main nerve down and around our stomach, you know, and our lower intestine. So it, in neuroception, he's talking about our nervous system channeling into this vagus nerve that has a direct link into our amygdala and our limbic system, and it sends information up. So we're always sensing safe, danger, not you know, we eventually, which we teach in EFT, you know, we don't necessarily teach it that way, but about safety and danger, the process of emotion, you know, we teach that. So this way that it's coming in, and we don't even maybe know what sends us into an activated state. But not all activation is fight, flight. Like I can be excited, and that's a physiological activation, but it's not, you know, a trigger away from connection, or a trigger away from, it's not going into a defensive state. Right? So we're able to be in activated states that aren't necessarily triggering, and we're needing to be able to utilize mixed states, like calm and soothed would be part of a shutdown response. I have to be able to shut down to sleep, to digest, to rest. And I don't want that to happen when I'm trying to connect, right? I want to be able to stay in this, what he would call social engagement space, where, which is around the heart space of the vagus nerve, where I'm safe and social at the same time.
I like that. I like the way just even these questions have kind of led us to right? We're doing this for them, but we've also got to be aware of ourselves. And that can be that limitation if we're not checking in with ourselves and our own ability to regulate and connect, and what those blocks are for us as therapists.
Yeah,
Okay.
so
ahead.
because the challenge for us as therapists, I think it's a pretty big challenge as EFT therapists, especially because, and other therapies teach that we are the tool, ourself, who we are, how we relate, how we interact. We are, the 40% of what makes therapy effective, our relational capacity. And so if we are dysregulated and not clear in our own system, and we're there to be empathic, EFT is teaching empathic presence, right? One of our main interventions is empathic responsiveness. So here I am building up my mirror neurons, my ability to reflect, my ability to connect, my ability to be in empathy, and which happens when the clients are also in their danger states, in their defensive states. And so if I am connecting with that in an empathic way, and it starts to get foggy between my nervous system and their nervous system, and I can't be the stronger, wiser other in the room because now I've joined them in a defensive state, I can't be as effective. So it's a big challenge for us, especially in EFT, where we are intentionally using our mirror neurons, building our ability to empathize, and then also know where we are and be able to lead the way into vulnerability that brings safe and social back, that creates safety back in the room.
Well, that's great. Wonderful. Ed, did you have a question?
Yeah, that's so helpful, because I'm just wondering if you could help with the practical application of that. Say I'm in session, we're stuck in content, I'm feeling some fear, it shows up in my belly, lower belly.
Right.
How would my work with or understanding of polyvagal help me work with that in the moment, so I can stay present, I can get the session back on track? And especially, is there a way that I could expect that feeling to move in my body? Is that it?
Yeah, absolutely. So emotion, what we know about emotion is that it moves, it might come in waves, and that especially as we attend to it, that it moves, it's made to move and kind of move through. It's when we get stuck that it's really problematic. And so when we get our own feedback loop that says, oh no, I'm in my head, or oh no, I've been chasing down the client, they're moving away from me. And that internal loop to me says, bad therapist, right? And then it increases and I might, then I'm at risk to increase either fight flight activation or go into more of a shutdown. And what I used to do is just kind of freeze on the chair as a therapist, okay, just let them go, and then I'll maybe find another spot where I can, excuse me, can I get in there? So one of the things that we can do in the moment is, which I think you probably already do, Ed, actually, is use the feeling to go, oh, and we've seen Sue do this, although I'm not sure that she would be breaking it down in the science in the same sort of a way. She thinks about it a bit differently, but she would say, oh, something important just happened, right? And I could see her get this shock, micro expression of something just hit her. and then should say, oh, something important just happened, and should slow it down. So there is that work that we can do where we can recognize that it's important for us to create that safety and to have that responsiveness, that we get that feedback that what we're trying to do is create enough safety that the client can be not at least non-defensive with us, or be moving in the direction of non-defensiveness with us, so that we can hold our ground or sit firm on the therapist chair. And so there's many ways to do that. One way is to verbalize that. One way is to, we know how to interrupt, to pause, to say, let's slow down. Those are all very helpful kinds of things to recognize, and it's kind of leading then with vulnerability, especially if I say, oh, wow, something just hit me. That didn't feel good. Maybe we can just slow down. Sometimes it's just totally out of attunement, right? Like, did either one of you just feel like, a pain in your gut? Or, there's many exercises and ways like breathing together to come back to create safety. Like, oh, this feels really icky. Something just happened, and I might need your help here for a minute. Can you give me a second? Maybe we could all breathe together. That's a very common intervention for me these days. Is, something just happened that's feeling really hard, feeling really tense. Let's just slow down and breathe together for a minute, okay? Some of my in-person clients, I still use proximity, move up, get closer to them. And there's one couple I can think of where we'll just take a minute and breathe, and the three of us hold hands together, make a little circle, and they look at each other until they can feel like that sense of more oxytocin, more safety kind of coming into the room. So there's different ways that, we're going to be responsive to different couples and to our own nervous system, our own personality way of doing that. So the goal in knowing, like, because polyvagal theory and Stephen Porges really values connection, knows that as mammals, we need that as well, and really honors that. So he teaches a lot about safety and kind of building this way that we're reducing psychological and physical distance. And some of our clients, it's the psychological, the emotional distance and pain that triggers them. And some of them, it's the physical distance. So if you've ever had a complex case, which you probably have, where the traditional pursuer pursuing for emotional connection, and the withdrawer pursuing for proximity, play, sex. And both of them feel devalued by the other, because here I'm trying to get safe by closing physical distance, says that we're connected, and then I can feel that connection. I can reach over and touch you even if I'm anxious and you don't reject me. Or on the other side, what are you feeling? I'm feeling nervous, or I'm feeling hurt. And reducing the psychological isolation. Like those, we really need that as mammals. And so we do need to be able to be like, our window of opportunity, like strengthen our nervous system ability to come back into that window of safety. And one of the things that Stephen Porges talks about is this vagus nerve and having good vagal tone in our nervous system, so that I can more quickly repair and come back into a safety state. It's really important, because what happens with chronic defensiveness, being, chronically misattuned to, abandoned, left rejected, the whole like attachment failure that can happen in many of our childhoods or our clients' childhoods, they really missed the rupture repair sequence, right? And so the strength of their nervous system to handle and reframe rupture as an opportunity to repair. It just goes right to defensiveness and creates a stronger defensive loop instead of like, oh, we're disconnected. Now I need to reach for you so we can repair. So when we as the therapists are have missed that rupture repair sequence or not had very much of it, and we're with clients who are difficult and they've missed that, then it's really behooves us to be doing things between sessions that also really increase our vagal tone so that we can expand that window of opportunity and more quickly, because moving into different states, it's not like we're just going to stay safe and social all the time. That's not really plausible. So, and it's very normal to be moving into different states. I want to be activated. I don't necessarily want to be defensive, but I need to be in an activated state, be excited, be enthused, motivated to do things, go get my exercise, and also need to be in a down-regulated state, which in high defensiveness is overwhelmed, shut down, dissociated. But I need to be able to sleep. I need to be able to rest and digest. I need to be able to lie in the arms of another and, feel like in a safe blanket. But if any one of those, if either being activated in an aroused state is paired chronically with danger and defensiveness, and also resting, getting away is the only solution, or I can't be even close to myself, then that can also add to the depression, and the negative view of self and other that just can get stronger and stronger when there's that chronicness. So it behooves us really to be working on our ability, because it's like a muscle, the vagus nerve. I mean, it's a nervous complex kind of cord, of neural activity and within our nervous system. So, but we can strengthen that. Like we might do push-ups or something, we can do exercises that actually help that. And then we can do some of those exercises with our clients as we start in sessions. And in these moments that you're describing, Ed, like, oh, I lose my balance.
Okay, I love that. Oh, there's so much. There's so many questions I could ask that are going to be in this masterclass, I know. Right?
Yes, absolutely.
Does anybody have a question?
We'll be practicing.
Yeah, I have others, but I want to also touch base with everybody in attending today. Does anyone have a question about what Becca just said? Christine?
Yeah, sorry, that was long, drawn out.
Sorry, Becca, I had a client, so I was a little bit late, but can you define what is it polyvagal theory or therapy? You define
No, it's
that a little
theory.
bit. It's so new to me.
It's a theory.
Okay.
It's from biological science. It's a pretty backed by science. Stephen Porges has been studying this for over 20 years. There's a lot of research. There's a lot of data from different branches of science. The application of it to therapy, we don't have any direct research of the application of it within EFT, though I think it's a great project. And it dovetails really well. So it's really bringing the biology of our nervous system into us so that we can utilize it in creating more safety in session. That's how I found it really useful.
Thank you so much. And you said, I'm going to look up Stephen. What was his last name? Can you spell that?
Porges, Stephen Porges, Porges. And if you look on my website under webinars, I have an interview with him under my talk time menu.
Perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Talk time. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Or I think you might even find it on my YouTube channel.
Okay.
I looked much younger and different.
Kind of following up to the theory.
Yeah.
I posted in like Bay Area therapist group on Facebook that polyvagal theory has been disproved And my personality type is to try to take in information, and
Right.
I mean, I'm drawn to it, but do you know what that's all about? Or
Yeah, I haven't dug into it. I've been more digging into the science that shows that it works, shows that it's there and that it works. And so I haven't spent that much time. I don't really know where that's coming from. There's so much evidence to it. It's kind of like EFT, people say it doesn't work too.
right.
Okay.
So,
Okay, we're going to jump back to another question. I recently read that loneliness increases cortisol. When we work with couples where one reports feeling lonely, it makes sense that they are also watchful for threats and receiving tons of messages of danger. This is such a painful feedback loop. The more lonely, the more threat, the more danger, the more absence of feeling and support. Can we put
Yes.
this feedback loop in the cycle? I criticize him to get to understand me, and my nervous system tells me that he is a threat, and I'm primed to not trust him.
yeah, oh, absolutely. I mean, I think that's exactly what we're doing in EFT. We're doing intrapsychic and interpersonal. So that puts it into the cycle, into the interpersonal cycle. And then also in that Tango Move 2, where we're doing affect assembly, where we're looking at the process of emotion. Oh, and this is the feedback loop inside of me that then in stage 2 really takes us to our view of self and view of others, where we're then bringing more affect alive so that we can get new meaning making from new experience. So yeah, that's exactly. And the language that you're using as you read that in that question, the language of "and my nervous system tells me" is so helpful. I have found talking about the nervous system really so normalizing to our clients, because all of this information that's coming bottom up that Stephen Porges would call that we're neurocepting, that we're getting it from our nervous system, it's going up to our brain, it's all meant to be unconscious. It's not like it's that choice. We don't have agency over what we're perceiving, because it's not perceiving this way. I mean, the reframing can be really helpful, but my nervous system goes, wow, danger, danger. And I don't even know why. So one of the concepts that I find pretty helpful is from Deb Dana. I haven't followed a lot of her work because well, that's probably a story for another day, but one of the things that I find pretty helpful from her is this little phrase that story follows state. And we would say that is when I'm in that danger state, I'm making meaning from within a danger state. And so my meaning is going to be about me or about you, if I'm the client, around why I'm upset or afraid or mad, or triggered. Well, because by the time it catches up to my meaning making, well, this is not new for us in EFT to know about this process of emotion. But to be able to say my nervous system, because I'm getting that information from my nervous system, and it knows, like you may have all read the book The Body Keeps the Score. Like that's really talking about how our nervous system and how our body recognizes threat. And we know that threat is also generalized as humans because we are meant to be more efficient neurologically. Like this is our prefrontal cortex is a big chunk of real estate that uses a lot of energy. And so one of the things that it tries to do is chunk the information and generalize it so it's much more efficient. If this, then that. If this, then that. And so get all this data, just tons of it from all of our senses that we can't pay attention to all the time, and it chunks it up. So I'm in I like the elevator. I walk into the elevator and I felt pretty happy, came from meeting friends in the lobby and going to the elevator, going back up to my room. And I just feel this tension in the elevator. Nobody's saying or doing anything, but I feel it. That's, that is our physiological, that's our nervous system responding. So I found it so helpful, even in the reframing, in the normalization, in the humanity of it. Like, yeah, that's how our bodies respond. That's your nervous system saying something feels off. Let's see if we can hang out with that and learn more about it. Where is that sensation? How is it moving? Can we just stay with that body, with that feeling in your body for a while? Because one of the things that we are doing is decreasing the distance between self and other, psychological distance and physical distance. So when we start to hang out with our attachment affect and those sensations that's in the body there, I'm actually helping the client start to reduce physical and psychological distance in their own self, which makes it more clear and coherent. So it can, really get me onto a good start with their affect assembly, their, bringing safety first into the room, and then their affect assembly, because they might slip into activation triggered response during affect assembly, but that can bring that clarity in, help them with that really directly with the body. And then that makes it much more clear enactments, because we're creating that safety, that safe base between us and them. So there less distance psychologically between us and them, sometimes physically, and within themselves. So we're handling that intrapsychic piece. So now it's much less of a risk to enact with the new threat of the partner, right? Because they're shored up in their own nervous system with me, and they have a much more clear signal that they can send to their partner.
That's so great. And there was a question about how does it look different between stage 1 and stage 2? And I think you just answered that, right?
Yeah.
Fine. So that answers that question there. Any other follow-up questions? Okay. Christine?
You don't have to call on me, but if there's anybody else has a question, I can wait. But I often, I'm trying to understand the nervous system and how if I understand it correctly, when we kind of get outside of our window of tolerance, we're up here in our kind of our amygdala, right? And it's more of a reactionary type part of our body where we react, but we're not able to process. We got to get stuff into the frontal cortex so we can process things. Is that right? Or is this polyvagal theory showing that our nervous system has the ability to somehow process, and is there some capacity there that I'm not aware of?
Well, it's bidirectional. Information flows up to our nervous system and also flows down, from our thinking down back into our body and our nervous system. So they work together. The majority of information flow goes from body up. And so we typically will do a lot of interventions that are making connection through language, thinking, reframing, rather than let's slow down and just breathe and get in touch with what's happening physiologically, what's happening in your nervous system. So we can create that safety that starts to flow up and helps clarify, like maybe even gives me the ability to speak because I feel safe enough to form words.
Right. And is that because in our last NUEFT workshop, the gentleman who came, he talked about how the science is showing the body reacts in 0.6 of a second, or pretty fast. The body reacts quicker than the brain can come online. Is that why you're saying it goes bottom up? And is that the right number, 0.6 of a second, or is there? Do you know? Is there a specific?
Yep.
6/10 of a
Yeah,
second.
and
And then
that
for
would be
brain,
more emotion. That's, more specific
okay,
to emotion.
okay,
Like the nervous, that's like we can tell from threat to response, right? Where I can actually think about, why am I responding this way? I can formulate that.
yeah,
So
yes,
that initial appraisal to the reappraisal, and what do I do? What am I doing? Recognizing what I'm doing. But
right,
this, our autonomic nervous system that's regulating all of our involuntary psychological processes, including our heart rate, our blood pressure, respiration, digestion, arousal, sexual arousal, emotional arousal, that is a constant flow up. So we're paying attention to when that sympathetic nervous system, the fight, flight, and the complex freeze comes on board. But we also really want to pay attention to those safety, and build the window of opportunity by having more safety.
yeah,
So I think
And
this
that's
is
the felt sense that we talk about, and the resonance, and being connected, where I can kind of relax and lean into and feel okay with the other.
thank you.
I love that. And this kind of leads me to this next question. What are interventions? I know you mentioned a couple, but what are interventions used to help clients regulate emotion? I would think for us and them, like intervention for them, or is there something that because another question that was asked is, how do we help the body to calm down? And I think, okay, mine, if this client is especially triggering, and what are interventions for helping them? Or what could I do before a session to help myself with a difficult client to regulate?
Well, it's so interesting. There are things that we can do before session, between session, just in our own lives, to like increase our window of safety and our repair sequence, that sequence where we get disconnected and then that we repair, the rupture repair sequence. So we can do that. That's helpful for us to be aware of when we feel that disconnection, and be more quick to make repair, so that our body is learning that when we hit that defensive state, to know that the fastest way out of that is to connect, right? To get that repair going. Your question reminds me of a doctor that I worked with years ago, who was a pediatrician, and he spent an hour a day in the morning before work, and an hour a day after, and on the weekend similarly, doing mindfulness, practicing mindfulness. So he would describe it as feeling peace, like that his nervous system would be grounded and that he would feel okay. And it helped him a lot at work, but in his relationship with his partner, she would just see him go away. And that mindfulness activity was like a danger cue that because he would do it in the middle of a conversation if he started to feel dysregulated, like, let me go, I'll come back in 20 minutes. He'd come back, but they would never pick up the conversation again because it'd get activated again. And so he was already avoidant, but it increased his avoidance. So we can do a lot on our own, but we need other, right? We need other. So yeah, I can do some things that help me, like, okay, I'm feeling kind of nervous or a bit defensive, maybe I can feel that hostile state or an avoidant place, right? Might notice being hyper focused. Like I noticed it this morning, actually, because I was, thinking about presenting and a little bit nervous and excited about it. And so when my husband came into the room, I was so occupied in my anxious, excited state, that I was startled, right? Like I wasn't, usually I notice somebody walking across the house, coming into the room, but totally like just about jumped out of my skin. And then I realized, oh, here I've been in this, not quite panicked, but a mixed state between really wanting to do well and being excited for the opportunity, and some of that pressure that when I'm in a more anxious place, I can get really right in my head and not so connected to others. So we actually have to have that rupture repair process and notice that defensiveness, and then have the repair or the reconnection. So, this morning that was an opportunity for me to go, oh, right, I'm in my head. It's not that you came in, and it's not your fault that I got startled. I'm glad you came in to ask me a question, to share information, and we could make that repair quickly. And then actually I noticed, oh, I'm not so like locked into my own head now. I felt calmer.
You see, and I was just going to ask the question that's so interesting you would say that, because I've thought about how it seems like when I can calm myself down in session, and when I think of that as almost like coming back to myself, and
Yep.
and I'm making peace. It's almost like I'm having a bonding moment with myself.
Yeah.
And then I'm in some ways almost energetically, maybe it's a mirror neuron, like modeling that for the clients. I don't know if that could be a thing.
Yeah, sure. It's very helpful. It's very helpful. Like I had to have done the work before the incident this morning that I could recognize that I was in that state. So I could claim it and, make that where he feels bad that he startled me, and like, oh no, I better not interrupt you, which of course that's not the message I'm trying to send at all. So that having done the work, that we can recognize that right away and utilize that, I think is very helpful. Right. But you're doing it with yourself, with others, and then with others, right? You're creating, oh, I noticed this disconnection. I'm disconnected inside myself. So how can I connect to others, find that place of safety and stability? It all can happen very fast, right? And then reach back out to my clients and get that reconnection going with them. So that is a great example of self-other, in the system.
Yeah, I like that. And there's a question that seems like a really good follow-up to that, which you may have already answered. Is there a way to use polyvagal theory to help our clients understand their process of emotion and their human need for connection in a way that is easy to understand? I think you kind of just described that, but.
Yeah, I think one is they start to feel more normalized about it. There's less shame about it, less fear around what's happening, and less disconnection around what's happening. They're less isolated because we're, bringing that safety and connection to them. We are co-regulating with them. And then when we're working with very difficult clients, that bit of bottom-up psychoed, like, oh, like I can loop back then after I do some of that work and say, so Ed, you just had that sinking feeling in your gut. What's happening there now? Right. And they can go, oh, like I might have never noticed that as a client before, because I know I'm not attentive to this, right? I'm not attending to my bodily responses because I've had psychological and physical distance. Many of our clients, first time you ask them, what are you feeling in your body? And they're like, nothing, or I don't know, or what do you mean, or laugh, some couples that laugh at me. There's that body question again, So, but to circle back to it so that they go, oh yeah, oh, actually I feel more me. It feels more expansive. I feel safer. It's okay. That churning is gone. It is very helpful in these little ways that we can utilize the knowledge that we can gain about our own nervous system from our own practice and rupture repair processes, and learning our own, what's my home state when I'm triggered into defensiveness. What's the place I go first? Do I go to shut down and overwhelm, close off, numb? Is that my home base? Or, it's not that we haven't been thinking or talking about these things, to become a pursuer or to become a withdrawer, like fleeing and fighting are still activated states. They're just going different directions. One's like I'm running out of the room, and then other ones I'm running after you. So as we know that, then we can refine that's my experience, is that I can refine my work with my clients and help them be more in touch with self and other in an embodied way, right? In an embodied way, which I find makes a big difference in the ability to really preserve, protect the connection in helpful ways.
Okay, I like that. Any follow-up questions from anyone? Okay, another question we had was polyvagal theory mentions the social engagement system. What is that system and how does it work?
So that is when our physiological response is in safety and not safe by myself, like I have to be alone to feel that relaxed, safe, comforted, ability to take in comfort, to connect in these different ways that is soothing. So it's that I'm safe and engaged socially. So it speaks to having that physiological response that says, I'm okay engaging with you. We're okay. I'm okay. We're connected and I'm in engagement. That's what we're seeking in connection.
Okay. Okay, good. I don't think I've asked this one. Stop me if I have. Can it be used to help with de-escalation validation? I'm thinking it might be helpful for clients to understand. Did I answer that? Did I ask that one?
You didn't ask it, but I do think it's so helpful.
I don't think that, again, it's not so helpful. Whenever there's really high distress, it's what I find is helpful is transparency of process, that we're transparent of what we're going to do, that we do what we're going to do, and that then we review what we did, because that as we become reliable and predictable, that's safe. That creates more safety and more connection. So it's not like I'm just going to, mind meld with you and tell you all I know about polyvagal theory if you're my client. What we know about psychoed is that it's little bits of bottom up meeting the need in the moment. And we know that there's more of that needed when people get really lost and really defensive, like to have more of an explanation about why they're doing what they're doing and how that is. That Tango Move 5, where we can say, oh, of course. And then the cycle came in and you had this distress in your body that said, danger, danger, get away. And we can be specific as we're helping them learn more about their bodily responses so that they can be more attuned and attentive to that, just like we want them to be have their attend to the emotion, because the bodily response moves into the emotion. There's not an emotion that doesn't have a physiological response connected to it. So in Magna Arnold's process of emotion, and what I use the acronym for ease me, that that effort, that event that happens, that initial appraisal, the somatic experience, that bodily response of safe or danger. And then that's what leads to the emotion. So it's the social part of us that has it become attachment affect. that so I can differentiate a sore toe between, a punch in the gut that's social rejection. And lots of our clients don't know how to do that. And we're helping that differentiation of those things, which helps them know themselves, and then they have more of themselves to share with others. And they can be more aware of, when they're impacting others in a way that they don't intend to, and that can be more true to their intention. It's like that ability of awareness that really increases my ability to like be accountable and to choose because I'm more aware.
Okay, I like that. I think this is a good follow-up question to that. Is polyvagal a trauma-informed modality or theory?
Yes, very much so. It really is. So when I'm talking about our highly escalated couples, our complex couples, our trauma clients, because this is where we get really stuck into chronic defensive states or PTSD responses. I was working with a client recently who had has PTSD and had some flashbacks happen, and was like, why did this happen again? And get so frustrated about the flashbacks happening, like maybe go very long periods of time without it. And then something in their couple relationship happens and there's these flashbacks again. So as we slowed that down, there were all these physiological early on build up things that were happening that when we slowed it down, that the client could was paying attention to. And oh, there was this that happened and this that happened, like the way that it stacked up until the dissociation burst through in flashbacks, right? So that it's really helpful for trauma because of that increased awareness of what's happening in my nervous system. What am I taking in? The conscientiousness around safety and valuing that, paying attention, helps a lot. I was talking to one of my children the other day about a feeling that I had when I met someone who turned out not to be a good person to hang out with. And I had this initial feeling that I didn't understand. It was some sort of ooh, or I could look back and feel this kind of feeling in my gut. And I didn't understand it. I dismissed it. But now I know what that feeling means, and I can feel it with other people, after that experience. So I think one of the things that we're doing is helping people to pay attention and to value the wisdom in their own body.
Oh, I love that. And that segues right into what your master class is, that embodied here, listening to your body and trusting your body, you trusting what's happening, trusting your gut, and even the messages we get. And then learning to, regulate, increase that window of tolerance for ourselves, for our clients. But what a beautiful thing that you have presented today. Beautiful message, and your knowledge and understanding around this topic is so, it's so powerful. It just feels like it's a way that we can engage in a different way with our clients and with ourselves. So thank you. Thank you. And if we want more, let's sign up.
I do have a question real quick that we had. As far as level of training for the masterclass, do they need to have some level of EFT training, or they need to complete an externship? What would be most helpful so that they are not completely overwhelmed?
Well, we'll be talking about interfacing this with EFT. So having some preliminary introduction, maybe having read the book, having an externship would be great, but I don't think required. At least knowing what EFT is and some sense of the tango could be helpful.
Okay, sounds good. If anyone else, I know there were some other questions about that. If they do have more questions, contact anyone on the board, contact Becca. Let us know how we can help you with that. But it sounds like really any basic understanding of EFT is really all they need.
Yep.
Perfect.
Thank you so
Great.
much for hanging out with me and letting me talk about something I'm so excited
Becca.
about.
Thank you, Becca. It was wonderful. Thanks, everybody. It was so good to see all of you and connect. It's awesome. And hopefully we can come together around this master class in September.
Thanks so
Okay.
much.
Have a good rest of your day.
We'll see ya.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.